We'll start up here in about a minute. Give people time to log in. Okay, we got a lot of folks signed in. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is David Orr. I'm the director here with the LTAP Center in New York, the Corner Local Roads program. And welcome to our session on pavement maintenance techniques. It's one of our foundational webinars. Our instructor today is going to be John Rondinero, and we'll see how the technology works. So John, I'll let you get started. I'll go dark, and Jody and Amanda will be watching the Q&A.
All right, great, David. Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Jody. We've had a couple of hiccups this morning making the like David mentioned, making the technology work. So just hang in there if we get hung up. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar series. As David mentioned, my name is John Rondinero, and I'll be your guide for today's session on common pavement maintenance techniques. Just as a little bit of quick background, I'm a retired New York State DOTer for 3 years now. I had a bunch of different roles over my career at DOT. I spent most of the 1990s in our main office highway maintenance division in Albany, including a couple years as the state's pavement maintenance program engineer. I then finished out my career at DOT with 15 years as the department's director of materials engineering. As I mentioned, topic of today's session is pavement maintenance, near and dear to many of our hearts. We'll be talking specifically about the three most common maintenance techniques: crack repairs, patching, and thin wearing courses, also known as surface treatments. We got a ton of territory we're going to try to cover in an hour. Our goal today is just to provide a very high-level overview of the basics with a focus on the why and how of timing, and how the correct choice of pavement maintenance actions is a key to keeping our roads and streets in good shape. But before we jump into it, I want to take care of a couple housekeeping items. First, this session is based on a workbook that was developed for our full-day pavement maintenance workshops. We held a bunch of these around the state last year, well attended, had real good feedback. We'll be doing these again in 2024. We'll talk more about our workshop program at the end of the session. The next, just want to quickly cover a couple items about using Zoom today. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a box that looks like what you see on the slide. This toolbox is going to give you a handful of different controls. And let's run through these real quick. First, you see the chat button. This is disabled. We use that to provide any kind of links to reference materials and other info we want to share. We'll put the link to the PM workbook in there. However, if you want a paper copy, just shoot us an email. We'll have the email address on the last page of the slide deck and also in the chat. We'll get you a copy, either electronic or hard copy. Strongly encourage you to get your hands on it. It's a great resource. The next tool is the raise hand feature. Let's try that out, see how many people can make that work. We'll use that occasionally. Got folks raising their hand. Jody? David? What do you see it?
Yep, I see some raised hands.
Awesome. Good, good. Thank you. All right, we know that works. And then finally, we've got the Q&A tool. We'll monitor that as we go along today, and you can put any questions and comments in there. Jody's going to flag them to me, and then we'll answer them as we move through today's show. So now, just regarding our PDHs, webinar today is worth 1 PDH for any of our New York State PEs in attendance. Counts as a course. However, only the person who is registered gets the credit. If you stay on for 75%, we'll get you a certificate of attendance. And then if you stay on for 90%, we'll ask you to email back into another one of our colleagues that handles professional development, and we'll get you that PDH. And for folks from other states, welcome. Appreciate you joining. However, you're going to need to check with your local LTAP center regarding your eligibility for our PDH. And then last but not least, we use a tool called PollEV. Anybody that's attended our webinars before is familiar with this. You should see the link in the chat, and this helps us get a handle on who's participating today. Great, let's see what we got. Oh, good, nice participation from across, a bunch of organizations. Looks good, nice representation, thank you. All right, let's try the next one. Tell us what your job is. Nope, it looks like we got a lot of engineers in attendance so far. Give you a second to log in. It looks like the tech is a little logy today. Taking maybe a snow day. 5 inches in the Capital District, so not a big deal today. All right. So so far it looks like the bulk of our participation is with the engineers. That's great. Worth your time to get the PDH, I hope. All right. How long have you been in your current position? Oh, nice wide range of experiences in time and title. That's excellent. Although it looks like we're leaning towards the old timers, so that's great. Challenge me if I say anything that doesn't make sense to you. All right. And then last but not least, my favorite, where are you zooming in from? Okay, I'm waiting for my favorite to show up though. I'm a Capital District guy, but there's one favorite place I like to see in terms of folks zooming in. Yeah, we've got somebody coming in from Canada, but not quite where I wanted to see it. Glad to have you though, joining our international colleagues. Usually we get somebody coming in from Long Island Sound, maybe the Atlantic Ocean, and a lot of times there's our Lake Ontario. All right, that's my favorite. All right, let's get right into it. Start off with a question. Which do you think is the most cost-effective way to keep your road system in good shape? Applying pavement maintenance treatments while they're still in good condition, or wait until they deteriorate and they need a more extensive rehab or reconstruction? All right, we've got almost unanimity. Everybody's weighing in on pavement maintenance, and that's the way to go. All right. We call these why webinars. David mentioned these are our foundation webinars, and we call them why webinars because we're asking the question, why do we do what we do? And in this case, we've got a road system. It's the key to moving people and goods from point A to point B. It's the backbone of the economy. We've got to keep it in good shape. And the way we do that is by the use of pavement management. We use any form of a system that inventories your roadways and conditions, and then allows you to plan and perform the required work. And it revolves around the key principles of right repair, right place, right time, and my own favorite add to this, right way. Yeah, this is a typical pavement deterioration curve. I'm sure almost everybody in attendance today has seen this. You start with a pavement in a brand new or an as new or like new condition. Over time, it starts to deteriorate. Then it hits a certain point, and that deterioration greatly accelerates. And then as it approaches the end of its life, it levels off again. But at that point, you've essentially got a gravel road. And you can take that same pavement deterioration curve and you can overlay the types of work that we can do in the various condition levels. So as you see is that while that pavement's still in relatively good condition, we're doing our routine maintenance like our ditching or guide rail repair, mowing, all those kind of things. We're also starting to do our preventive maintenance activities, our crack sealing primarily. And then as we go down the line, we're going to be looking at corrective maintenance, things like patching or larger crack repairs. And also in the preventive maintenance category, I don't want to, I said primarily crack sealing, but we're also talking about our thin wearing courses. Once that pavement deteriorates to a less than good condition, though, you're starting to look at rehab and reconstruction. And why is this important? Well, you look at the same pavement deterioration curve, and if you let that pavement deteriorate to where it's in a less than good condition down into a poor condition, you're looking at costs of 4 to 5 times as much for rehab as it would be if you were applying pavement maintenance treatments while that pavement was still in good condition. And that's a conservative number, the 4 to 5 times. A lot of the current literature says that when you're applying, when you're trying to do reconstruction, it's costing you 15 to 20 times as much. So real big difference in cost from the way you attack that pavement. And we look at our pavement maintenance treatments and we ask the question, why? Well, those maintenance treatments are our inexpensive repairs on good roads to keep in good shape. We don't want them looking like that picture in the slide. And we're doing that to maintain safety first and foremost. But we're also doing it to protect the public's investment. We're using it together. You put those two items together, and that's making the best use of your limited resources and giving you the best bang for the buck. Again, you don't want your pavements looking like that. You want them looking like this. And again, not like that. So with that, let's jump into some of the specifics. We'll start with our repair choices overall, and that's referred to Chapter 3 in the workbook. And then you've got two major categories of tools in the toolbox. You've got your pavement maintenance items, and what differentiates them is you're really not adding any kind of structural strength to your pavement. And then on the other side of the ledger, you've got your pavement rehab category. You are adding structural strength there. And the big difference here is even with the most robust pavement maintenance system or strategy, eventually all your pavements are going to wear out. So while you do as much of the pavement maintenance as you can, at some point that pavement's just gotten past its useful life, you're going to have to do some sort of rehab and reconstruction. You're going to have to restore or add to that structural strength. The point here, we're going to be covering those in our upcoming spring workshops, 2024 or 2023. Really want to make sure you get a chance to take a look at our website and register for our asphalt paving workshop. Back to topic of today, our pavement maintenance activities, again, crack repair, patching, area repairs, and thin wearing courses. And we'll be covering those in the 2024 workshops. In terms of our pavement treatment selection framework, it's a pretty straightforward approach. You're looking at your pavement distresses, you're analyzing your probable causes, and then you're looking at your portfolio of tools in the toolbox, all the way from do nothing all the way to reconstructing that roadway. And based on your distresses and the probable causes, you're going to evaluate your alternatives and pick an option or options to further evaluate. When you're inventorying your pavement distresses, you've got 4 major categories of distress you're looking at. You've got your cracking, your longitudinal, your transverse, your alligator cracking, your edge cracking. But once that cracking advances too far, you're going to be looking at your pavement deterioration, primarily potholes, but also any kind of temporary patching that you've used to repair those potholes on a temporary basis. You're also looking at your surface defects, things like polishing of the surface, where you're losing your skid resistance, any sort of bleeding, any sort of raveling, all those kind of surface defects you want to be making sure you're inventorying. And then finally, your surface deformations, you're looking at your rutting, shoving, corrugations, anything where the pavement surface is moving around. And then once you've identified the types of pavement distress, you're going to rate each of those distresses in terms of its extent and severity. And you're going to be looking at very simple categories of low, medium, and high, but that gets you that'll help you target the appropriate repair strategies or treatments. And along with that, you've got to be analyzing your causes. You don't want to just be attacking what's on the surface. You've really got to understand what's causing that distress. And a lot of times your key culprits are your drainage. You've got water problems, heavy truck traffic or other kind of vehicle traffic. A big distressor of our pavements, but also weather and any other kind of environmental factors. And again, together with the type of distress, that's going to target your appropriate repair strategy. And just one thing I want to point out in terms of inventorying and rating your distresses, this is the perfect time of year to get out there and do those distress surveys. This is just after, in my neighborhood, just after a recent snow earlier last week. And once that pavement, you get that snow off that pavement and it starts to dry out, the moisture is still in any of the cracks or any of the other distresses, and they jump right out. They jump right out. The nice black You know, you see that nice and black against the gray oxidized surface of the pavement. And same thing here with your alligator cracking. You know exactly what you're dealing with. And the same with any kind of patched areas. You can see, yep, they did some recent patching, but you've got a lot of alligator cracking that's still out there that needs to be tackled. So let's, another quick question before we select the pavement treatment. What's the fundamental question we need to ask? And just type in your answer. Let's see if anybody clues in. David, you can answer if you want to. Root cause, excellent. That's great. What's the cause? Excellent, excellent. How long will it? Excellent, excellent points. Cause. All right, well, I'm going to jump ahead because everybody's in there. Good question, but the fundamental question, which is closely related to cause, is how's the drainage? David shared this photo. He has it courtesy of a gentleman named Jay Olson. This is a picture of a street up in Saratoga after a recent rainstorm. And anytime you see ducks making a playground out of your roadway, you know you've got to be fixing the water before you do anything else to the pavement.
John, we have a question. What are the
Sure.
limits?
The limits of?
I'm not sure. The person just wrote, what are the limits?
Well, if that person could clarify what the limits of what, then we'll answer the question. Be happy to. And I'll keep moving on. We'll tag it at the end of the next piece. Thank you, Jody. All right, so talking about crack repairs, chapter 6 in the workbook. Quick question, why do we fill or seal cracks in the pavements? Just type in your answer. Yep, prevent water infiltration. Yep, keep the water out. Exactly. Prevent more damage. Absolutely. Keep the water out. Yep. Everybody's right on the money. That's water's the enemy. All right. So again, answering the question of why, we're sealing and filling openings in the pavement surface to prevent or reduce the flow of water and debris. And debris is important. We'll get to that in a minute. And therefore preventing or reducing the rate of deterioration. And the factors that we consider when we're talking about any kind of crack repair are the crack density or the extent of cracking, how much of the surface is affected, the edge deterioration, which is the measure or the primary measure of the severity of the cracking, the width of the crack, at some point it gets too wide to fill, and the movement within the crack. And this is key. So you've got two different techniques that you can utilize, sealing versus filling. Sealing you're using to attack working cracks, and that's cracks that are moving greater than 1/8 of an inch between your seasons. So in summertime, those cracks are nice and tight. You might not even be able to see them. They're almost like a hairline crack. But as the season moves on and the temperature starts to drop, that crack is going to start to widen out. And then you get into the middle of the winter, the deep of the winter, those cracks are wide open. If that crack has moved more than 1/8 of an inch between, or that width is increased more than 1/8 of an inch between the seasons, you've got a moving crack. You want minimal or no edge deterioration. You're going to be using a modified material, an engineered material, which is highly flexible to be able to deal with that moving crack. Yes, it costs more, but it's the only thing that's going to work in that case. And the key here is you're preventing the intrusion of water and debris. And the reason you're concerned as much about debris as anything is crack is wide open in the middle of winter. We're doing all our snow and ice control efforts, but you're pushing a lot of junk down into that wide open crack. But then as that temperature starts to rise and that crack starts to tighten up, you're crushing that debris as that crack tightens up, but you're also crushing the sidewall of that crack, and it's going to be greatly advancing the deterioration and really, taking it from a nice, clean crack to a really nasty looking crack. In the same way, when you're looking at crack filling, you're looking at non-working cracks. There is no movement. There is essentially no movement between the seasons. In that case, you can have up to moderate edge deterioration. You can use conventional materials, and the real key here is you're just trying to keep water out of the pavement section. And this is an example of a perfect candidate for crack repair. or crack sealing or crack filling. A nice clean crack, no interconnected secondary cracking, nice straight, perfect candidate for crack sealing. This is a candidate that's probably at the end of its window of opportunity. The crack is starting to get pretty raggedy looking in its upper edges. You're starting to see a lot of raveling at the surface. You're starting to see almost some potholes develop. Not a lot of interconnected secondary cracking, but they're on their way. If you don't hit that this season, and you're going to have to route this one in to get a nice clean channel. If you don't hit it this season with a route and seal project, you're gonna lose your window of opportunity for crack sealing to work. And here's a case. Who thinks, quick raise hand, who thinks this is a good candidate for crack sealing? Jody, what do we got?
Nothing yet.
Well, I'm going to take that as an indication that people are saying this is not a good candidate. And
Actually,
they
we
are
have
correct.
one that's saying no.
Yeah, good. Well, David, you're right. That is not a good candidate because it's got a ton of interconnected secondary cracking. You've got a lot of deep, nasty looking stuff that's developed. And then to make matters worse, you're in the wheel path. It looks like it's in the center of the rut, so it's going to be almost 100%. It's going to be load related. You can't crack sealing is not going to do you any good in this case. You're going to have to look at your drainage to see if there's any kind of drainage problems, and you're also going to have to look at the extent of the cracking. As far as I can tell, it goes, as far as the eye can see, you're going to be looking at some kind of rehab treatment in this case, or some sort of other kind of repair strategy, which we'll talk about in a minute.
John, we do have one saying that it's a good candidate for mastic.
Yep. They got ahead of the game. Excellent. Whoever came up with that, you're right on the money. You know your stuff. In this case, thank you, Jody. In this case, we're looking at some alligator cracking. And anybody think this is a good candidate for crack sealing? Got any answers yet, Jody?
Nothing yet.
Yeah. Well, again, I would say no, not a good candidate. Had you caught this a couple years ago, it probably would have been a good candidate before those cracks had gotten to this point and they were just hairline cracks. The rest of the pavement's in pretty good shape. You've still got good cross slope. You don't have any rutting. This would have been a good candidate for some sort of wear and coarser surface treatment. But at this point that those cracks have advanced too far, you're probably looking at a minimum an overlay, but because this is a residential street right down the road from my house, you've got all kinds of problems with the matching up to your driveways. So at this point, this is a candidate for a mill and fill or a recycling. So in terms of materials, the big difference between filling and sealing is filling, you're using conventional materials, and sealing, you're using modified or engineered materials, and that'll give them the flexibility to move with the moving crack. In terms of configurations, 3 standard configurations. You've got your flush fill, which was the way we traditionally did it. Then we moved into the overband, where you were sticking the nozzle into the crack, filling it up, and then putting a fair, up to a 1/8 inch thick band of material, 2 to 3 inches on either side of the crack. That got us in a little bit of trouble. I'll talk about that in a second. And now, especially in terms of moving cracks, right, at least from the DOT perspective, we strongly recommend you use the reservoir. You route or saw in a channel, and that gives you a real nice lot of surface area for that highly engineered material to bond to. And this is what I'm talking about. Back in the days when we were overbanding a lot, we got to the point where we thought we could pave with crack sealer. But big problem, especially if you're on 2 wheels, because as soon as you get a drop of moisture on that, it turns into a skating rink. So in the mid-90s, we had a big effort. We had a lot of issues with the Motorcycle Association. They raised very legitimate issues. We got out there with our industry and other DOT colleagues, and we totally revised the spec. And now you shouldn't see anything like this on a DOT or a state highway. And I hope you don't see it on any of your local facilities either. That is as dangerous as it comes. In terms of construction operations, very straightforward. You're going to be cutting in, especially with a sealing operation, you're going to be cutting in with either a saw or in this case, a routing rig. You're going to be blowing out, or cleaning and drying your crack. You've got to make sure it's clean and dry for any of those materials to appropriately adhere. And the one thing you want to remember when you're working with a compressor is you have you have an oil water separator installed, because you don't want to be blowing moisture or oil droplets into the crack. Otherwise, it's going to end up like this. No matter what material you use, if it's not clean and dry, that material is going to pull right back out. You can also clean and dry using a heat lance. They're a real nice rig. You usually see them mounted with it on a block or a skid like this. The key here is you're keeping that the nose of that lance off the pavement surface, because otherwise you're going to be burning it, and that'll break down the edge of your crack and put you in worse shape than you were before you started. This is a typical crack sealing rig, toe behind, and this is just a typical wand in disc setup. It gets a nice, it squeezes the material down into that nicely prepared crack, and then leaves a nice thin film of material. It's not an overband at all. And in terms of finishing, it's as simple as getting a squeegee from Home Depot, putting an inverted V on the end, and then running that the bottom of the V across the newly placed material, and it'll leave a surface that looks like just like this, with a nice little indentation that will allow you don't want to be overfilling, because if when that crack is tightening up as the temperature gets lower and lower, you don't want to be pushing that material out above the existing surface of the pavement. Otherwise, it becomes a target for your snowplows. And then blotting, in the bad old days, folks, the crack sealant was not, or the crack repair materials weren't curing real fast, and people wanted to get traffic onto that material, that newly placed material, as quickly as possible. So they tried all kinds of things, and one of the things they tried was toilet paper. Well, that made quite the mess, and they stopped using that real quickly. Then they started trying to use any kinds of fine aggregates or any kind of grit material. That doesn't make for a good project either. So as per our DOT specs anyways, blotting is not allowed. The materials cure up real fast now, and you just wait for it to tighten up or harden up, and then you can put traffic right on it. In terms of your weather conditions, you want it to be real nice. You want your temperature greater than 40 and rising. You want humidity below 80%, and you want no chance of rain. At DOT, we always look for a window of 2 days before and 2 days after your planned crack sealing day, to make sure you had the good window for that crack sealing operation. So what's the most appropriate way to treat our moving cracks? Crack filling or sealing? Let's see what people say. Yep, everybody was still awake. Yep, we want to be sealing it, because you're going to be using the engineered materials, which you're going to allow that sealant to move with the movement of the crack. Excellent. Thank you, everybody. All right, let's move on. We're going to pick up the pace a little bit, about halfway through our session. Let's talk about patching, and that refers to Chapter 7 in our workbook. All right, this picture says it all. Anybody that's left a pothole, a muffler or an axle or something bigger in a pothole is not a very happy camper. So we've got 4 different patching types. We've got our semi-permanent patching that we do when the asphalt plants are open. We've got spray patch, which has seen a little bit of use in New York, not a whole lot. We've got our demand patching, which is our go-to patching when the asphalt plants are closed. And then we've got mastic patch. So semi-permanent, it's a pretty straightforward. Again, it's when the asphalt plants are open. You want to be cutting a rectangular boundary. You don't want to be trying to follow the edges of the distress, because every time you put a corner in, you're going to make you're introducing a weak spot that all those jogs are real difficult to compact. And I know they were trying, but in the end, this is just not the way you should do it. You should square it right off. Anything you saved in materials, you gave up in labor, and you've introduced a lot of weak spots. So what you do is you'd mark out the edge of your visible distress, and then you'd go 6 to 12 inches with a rectangle outside of that distress. And the reason you do that is you've got a lot of fractured or distressed material of the, up to 6 to 12 inches back behind the edge of that, the visible surface of that distress. So you want to get your boundaries marked out and cut in outside of those distressed areas. You want to remove the material. You can use all kinds of equipment. In this case, they're using a small milling machine. The one thing you don't want to be doing is coming in with the, once you cut it, saw it out or make that saw cut, you don't want to be coming in with the bucket of a loader, because all you're going to be doing is tearing that pavement apart. Clean and repair, and then apply your tack coat. Tack coat is critical, just like in any paving operation. Fill your hole 1/4 of an inch for every inch of compacted depth. And a lot of times you're going to be seeing these plate vibratory tampers. And that's okay for a real small hole, but you got to remember, you're only going to be getting 1 inch to 1.5 inches, maybe at the most 2 inches of compaction. Anything thicker than that, you're not going to be compacting the bottom half. So you're going to be going in with a lot of thin lifts if you're using a tool like this. You're much better off if you're using a small roller. And then you've got a finished patch. So anybody seen spray patching? Yes or no? Oh, all right. We do have some folks who've seen spray patching. That's great. Excellent. All right. A lot of times you see towable equipment like this. It's a self-contained unit. But you might see an automated rig like this become more common with the folks that are contracting, the contractors that are doing this work. Key here is it's a self-contained unit. You're blowing the debris from the hole. You're going to be spraying in tack coat from the same unit. You're going to be switching over your lever. You're going to be blowing in a mixture of aggregate and binder. You're then switching your lever again. You're going to be topping off with aggregate, something, to blot up any excess liquid. Then you blow it off again, perhaps, and then you can do this all year round in almost any weather. So it's a real nifty operation. Anybody that's, for the folks who've done it, have gotten good feedback. For most cases, folks are pretty satisfied. And then when you're looking at these automated rigs, typically under contract again, that's like the newest technology. It's like working with a space shuttle. They pull up over the top of a hole. They've got look down cameras. They've got all kinds of other sensoring systems. They hit a bunch of different controls, blow it out, spray in your mix of aggregate and liquid, top it off, blow it clean, and then move on to the next hole. It's a pretty nifty operation. So, switching gears a little bit, why do we do our demand pothole patching? See what folks think. Yep, complaints, absolutely. Number one reason, safety, that is the main reason we do address them. Extend the life of the pavement, yep, don't let it deteriorate anymore, can be dangerous. Absolutely, everybody's on, everybody, respond to the public. Everybody's tuned in, that's good. Well, we usually do our demand patching, our temporary pothole patching. We do it in the best of conditions. Everybody can relate to this picture, I'm sure. And the why of it, well, we've already talked about it. It is our most common pavement maintenance technique, and it is primarily to restore safety. And because of that, wanting to take care of safety and being responsive to the public, a lot of our local agencies now have 24-hour standards for pothole patching. In the old days, we used to use a technique called throw and go, and we paired that up with the use of conventional materials. But typically, you'd put the material in the hole, and it'd last for about 10 seconds. So now we focus on the use of the throw and roll technique, and you pair that up with the use of the engineered or modified materials, and you've got a patch that'll last for the season. The one thing you want to remember with any of these temporary or demand patching activities is you're not repairing any of the underlying distress. So here's just a quick couple pics about throw and go and the results of throw and go. David shared this picture. It's outside of the Cornell campus. There were a couple of jurisdictions, 3 jurisdictions that were responsible for it, all using throw and go. They get that material, they toss a shovelful of material into the hole, they tap it down with the back of the shovel, and they move on to the next one. And then about 10 minutes later, it looked like the hole in the right-hand side. So they weren't getting much bang for their buck. Throw and roll is the way to go. You got to clean out your hole a little bit, but it's not critical. You're going to take you're going to take a shovelful of that material off the back of your truck. Look at that, and just take a look at that material. Even in this picture, you can see it glossy, shiny, sticky, gooey looking. That's exactly how that engineered material looks. Then the key here is you back your truck, that high pressure tire over the top of that hole, pull forward, and you've got your finished hole. Now, the only thing I would do differently here is I'd pull back and forth one more time to knock off those high edges. And here's just a quick demo we do in our workshops. On the left hand is a simulation of the throw and roll technique. On the right is the throw and go. You put the timer on it, and as you can see, after 26 seconds, that throw and go is already starting to break down. The throw and roll is compacting under its own weight, and by the time you get to 5 minutes, that stuff is already so broken apart that it's flying out of the hole the first time the car hits it. So throw and roll. Yes.
We do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is this on the order of using cold patch?
Yes. Yep, that's exactly what this is. These are engineered cold patch materials. They've got they're polymer or rubber modified, and they're what we would strongly recommend. They're available off the OGS contract. So thank you, Jody. So what do we do if we've got a long section of road with large cracks? They're over 1 inch wide, and we've got high levels of edge deterioration. It's a really severe crack, but you don't have enough money to do a rehab. And in terms of our answers, we're talking crack seal, cry, do nothing. Jody, what are our answers showing us?
Crack seal?
Yep. Okay. It looks like a handful of folks are saying other though, and I think they're right. The folks that are saying crack sealing, yeah, it's over 1 inch wide and it's a high level of deterioration, not going to work. So what are you going to do? Who's used mastic patch? Okay, got a handful of folks out there that have used mastic. Now, anybody that's used mastic, I hope you're in the same category I am. I think that stuff is magic. So what is mastic? Well, it's a hot poured material. We've got a lot of growing use in New York. It comes as a modified liquid asphalt. It's pre-mixed in a bale with lightweight aggregate. So there's all you're doing is throwing it into a rig like a crack seal mixer, only it's specifically designed to deal with that the lightweight aggregate that's already in the bale. You use this where the pavement is highly deteriorated, where you've got the cracks greater than 1 inch, or you've got extensive alligator cracking. You need that. You need the distress clean and dry, but you can apply it when it's very cold out. Heard about a couple states that are applying it when the temperatures are 0. They do have to keep the pavement at 40, but they build enclosures just like you would on a bridge project for concrete pours. You discharge it out the chute from the melter unit. It looks like a mini transit mixer, and you can either pour it directly into the hole, or you can spread it over a crack. The alligator cracking using a drag box or a squeegee. There are some initial national standards out there, and they're continuing to evolve. So here's what the gradations look like. You've got a fine aggregate gradation, which you use for your thin applications to cover up your alligator cracking, or you've got the coarse aggregate gradation, which you would use to fill large cracks or big potholes. And this is what it looks like out in the field. You've got a big crack. Crack sealer just wouldn't work to deal with this crack. But you come in with a mastic application, you've got that crack seal you've got that crack nice and covered. And the one thing you want to notice is look at the roughness of that crack. That's that lightweight aggregate that's in there. You're going to be applying wherever you apply it now. You have appropriate skid resistance. You can use it in concrete applications. So in this case, you typically have to use a concrete repair material. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. You can hit it with mastic and you've got it nicely repaired area. Do the same thing with bridge approaches. No problem with the exposed aggregate, binds right to it. And here's the construction operation. You're pouring it out the back of the rig, out of the chute, into a drag box in this case. In this case, you're using a drag box, but because you're doing a transverse crack, you're going to just empty the chute into a pail and do it a little labor, a little more hand type of work, but you're still getting a nice coverage of that crack. And some of the contractors now are using these little buggies that they would also be using for crack sealing operations. And again, you've got a nice big clean hole. You couldn't put any kind of material. And if you were trying to put a hot mix in there, you may or may not get it to bond. But in this case, the mastic is a perfect application. And here was an alligator, a big patch of alligator cracking up against this concrete apron. You poured it in from the chute. You're drag boxing it over and then squeegeeing it to finish it off. So nice application. And then where are we at and what's next? Well, at this point, all of the manufacturers each have their own specific technical requirements. As I mentioned, national standards are being developed. There is an initial ASTM standard out there. The standards and specs are continuing to evolve. DOT has got their own DOT spec. And at this point, mastic is available under the OGS contract. So if you're interested in something that might help bridge between your pavement maintenance and your rehab repair techniques, this is something you might want to explore. And with that, we're heading into the home stretch. Got about 20 minutes left. Let's talk about thin wear and courses, chapter 8 of the workbook. And the why of wearing courses? Well, seal and protect your pavements. You can cover up your minor cracking, prevent water penetration, those kind of things. And you're also using them to provide or restore your skid resistant surface. You can be using it to restore any kind of aged or oxidized surface anytime that the pavement's just getting old and gray and a little dried out, either from weathering or other environmental issues. And then last but not least, you can also in specific cases use it to fill minor ruts, and that's a specific treatment that we can use. Point about this picture right here, when your pavement looks like this after a recent precipitation event, and that pavement's starting to dry out and you get this salt and pepper mottled look, that tells you it is the perfect time to consider your some sort of wearing course or surface treatment, because water is just starting to be able to penetrate into that surface, and you want to get it sealed back up so that that water beads off and rolls right off of it. In terms of our thin wearing courses, got a handful of tools in the toolbox. We've got sand seals and chip seals, which are emulsion based with an aggregate cover. We've got slurry seals and microsurfacing, which are emulsion based out of an all-in-one unit or a self-contained unit. The microsurfacing is really a slurry seal on steroids. You're using a polymer modifier to really juice up the treatment. And then Nova Chip is a specialty treatment. It's a combination of emulsion with an asphalt overlay. And then finally, we've got our standard or traditional thin asphalt pavement overlays, but in this case, they're thin, less than an inch, as compared to the 1.5 inches that we would use for a single course overlay. So here's just a sand seal, nice rich brown color of that emulsion on the pavement surface, and then you're hitting it with the sand application. Chip seal, you're using a larger aggregate. A couple things you want to notice here with this picture. You've got a nice uniform spray coming out of that liquid distributor. You've got your aggregate spreader up tight to that liquid distributor, and you've got a nice brown color in that emulsion that you're applying the aggregate to. And then last but not least, you've got your trucks backed and stacked. You don't want to be stopping your operation. You want to make sure you got more than enough trucks to keep feeding that aggregate spreader. So when you're applying an emulsion-based surface treatment like a chip seal, you want the emulsion to be deep black-brown color prior to applying the aggregate cover. Yes or no? we're about 50-50. Okay, well, let's see what the answer is. Nope, you want it to be brown. And why do you want it to be brown? And why, how do these emulsions work? Well, they're tiny droplets of liquid asphalt, and you're blending them at high speed with an emulsifying agent, something like a soap, into water. That's creating a suspension, and that's what's giving you your nice brown color. And just here's a cutaway. You've got your emulsion. You've got it, blended at high speed. So you've got the black stuff and the clear stuff. It blends together, and you've got that rich brown color. That emulsion is attracted to and bonds to coat your aggregate. And once that emulsion is in contact with the pavement or the aggregate, it starts to do what we call break. And that means that water is separating from the asphalt and it's turning black. So you put down your brown emulsion, nice rich brown color. It hits the surface of the pavement. You're hitting it with the aggregate. That asphalt and water are breaking apart to their component pieces. That's your break. And then as that water evaporates, that's your cure. But at that point in time, your aggregate is already embedded in that liquid asphalt, and that liquid asphalt is hardening up around your aggregate. And that's why you want it the brown color. If it's black, that aggregate's not going to stick or not going to bond to the liquid asphalt. And in this case, you get somebody who's applying their sand cover to a black emulsion, and that's not going to stay there. And in this case, this is a great example of a lot of things not to do in the chip sealing operation. You've got your liquid distributor way up, almost 50, at the top portion of the slide, getting ready to round that corner. You got the black. Your applied emulsion is turned black, and the crew has realized they got a problem, because now you can tell they've applied some aggregate, and now they're backing off. They've got that, they know that aggregate's not sticking, and they're shaking their head saying, what do we do next? So if that emulsion is turned black, don't apply your aggregate. If it's brown, put it down. If it's black, take it back. Quoting David. All right, in terms of slurry seal, that's a self-contained unit. You're mixing within the unit. You're pushing it out through the chute of the unit. It's going into your spreader box and then being topped off by or struck off by your screed. Gives you a nice applied surface. Microsurfacing, as I mentioned, is your slurry seal on steroids, and did a lot of that in the 90s when we had some pavement polishing issues down in Long Island. It's a hell of a product. And really works well in a lot of applications. It's a great wearing course of surface treatment, and it gives you a lot of wear and tear. Gives you good performance because it does have that polymer modification, and it's also got another attribute. It can be used for the microsurfacing can be used for rut filling. So originally it was designed or developed in Germany specifically to fill ruts. So in this case, on the right-hand side of side of the slide, you see two rut fill passes, and they do this. They attach a V-shaped rig to the outside within the spreader box, and that channels your microsurfacing material into the ruts. And you can get a 3/4 inch rut fill. In some cases, we're hearing that other states and some other countries are actually doing a double course application in those ruts. So you can get fill up ruts to up to 1.5 inches.
John?
Yes.
We do have a question. What is the dry time using the slurry?
Good question. It's going to depend on the emulsion. David, you got a good answer there?
It's going to depend on, yes, the emulsion, the weather, all those kind of things. You can normally get traffic if you're using a quickset or a microsurface within just a few minutes.
Yeah.
But you can talk to the supplier about how quick you want to get traffic back on there, and they can make some adjustments on that as well.
Right. Good.
You might
Thank
need
you.
as much as half an hour if it's just a straight slurry, though, depending on the weather conditions.
Yeah, that was my experience. Is microsurfacing was pretty quick, but it was because they targeted their emulsion, they mix design with the specific emulsions, and but the slurry seal was a lot slower.
Yeah, they add a polymer to one and they add some cement to the quickset, which
Yeah.
helps speed the process. But
Gotcha. Great, thank you. And then if you look at the left-hand side of the slide, they've done the same rut filling, but now they've hit it with a surface course, and you've got a nicely finished pavement. The microsurfacing's got a lot of good uses. NovaChip is a specialty operation. It's a proprietary paver that you combine with a polymer modified hot mix coming out of a polymer modified asphalt mix coming out of an asphalt plant. What you get is a chip seal like surface. Notice the real rich brown emulsion underneath it. And so you're mixing, you've got that single stone thickness on that nice thick, rich emulsion. And the key here is out of the bat, you've got a built-in spreader bar in the spreader box, and it's spraying that emulsion right, that really juiced up, thick, gooey emulsion right in front of that, polymer modified asphalt mix material, and you end up with a product that looks like this. They're essentially welded together. It's a real nice specialty project. Do a lot of, see a lot of it on bridge decks. It is more expensive, but boy, in the right situations, it's a great treatment to use.
John, we have
Yep.
another question. How do you achieve proper compaction and rut filling?
All right, in terms of microsurfacing, you don't do compaction. And if you were using it, you'd run your rut fill in, it would be struck off within the rut, and then you'd come back in with your sometimes with a scratch course, and then sometimes with a scratch course, with a scratch course combined with a surface course, and sometimes just with a surface course. With the thin overlays, it's a traditional rolling operation. So you could, in some cases, not highly recommended, but you can come in and do some T&L and then put your thin 6.3 mix, which is what I've got here on the slide. And it's just a real nice dense mix, but it is it's a thin asphalt mix, less than an inch thick. And then real quickly want to touch on our asphalt paving materials, our 6.3 mix. You've got two different mixes. Who's familiar with warm mix? Just a quick show of hands. Jody, let me know if we see some hands. Well,
We have about 19 raised hands.
Oh, okay. So folks are familiar with warm mix. That's good, because anybody that hasn't seen it up till now probably will see it this year. And let's talk about the difference between hot mix and warm mix. All right, hot mix, this is what you'd see loading out. You'd see a lot of steam coming off your load. On the right-hand side, you've got warm mix, almost no steam coming off. And why do you see that? See the same thing here with your paving operation. You've got your hot mix coming down at 320. You got you're being laid down at 320. You got all kinds of steam coming off it. You got your warm mix being laid down at 245, no steam at all. So why do you see that? Well, you're using a variety of different technologies to produce and place your asphalt at a reduced temperature. And you're looking at 275 and lower for warm mix versus 325 to 350 with your hot mix. And that temperature reduction is going to depend on your technology and the different situations. But you've got a whole lot of benefits. You're going to get lower fumes and emissions, lower energy, better worker environment, lower plant wear, increased workability, all kinds of good things when you work with a warm mix. So why is that important? Where are we today? Well, in September of 2021, the DOT put out an engineering bulletin that moved New York State to 100% hot mix, or 100% warm mix. There is no more hot mix to be used on New York State projects. The 402 items were removed from the spec book. They're now 404 items, which are warm mix items. The bottom line is warm mix is the same as hot mix. It's just at lower temperatures. There's a real good chance you're going to see it this season, 2023. And the key here is you've got to closely coordinate with your producer regarding your paving practices, especially your roller temperatures. Because per the DOT spec, it's going to be 295 max at the paver, and you're going to be completing your breakdown rolling before 230. So It's real critical. You got to be talking to your producers, and this applies to any time you're using an asphalt mix, whether it's for an overlay, whether it's for paver patching, grader patching, hot box patching. You're going to be working with warm mix, and it's a different animal. Although you're going to get the same end result and the same performance, or better. And so this is what we want when we apply our thin wearing courses. In this case, it's a double chip seal. Got this picture from David, but it's a nice finished product. So closing out, we usually do an exercise in our workshops. I'm going to, for the sake of time, I'm going to bounce right through it, but here's our standardized process. There's a couple nice tables in the workbook, table 5 that talks specifically about crack repairs. And then a more extensive table, table 4, that talks about all your different kinds of distresses and the appropriate conditions for the different repair techniques. Here's what you do in the field every day. You're taking a look, you're looking at your distresses, you're analyzing your causes, you're probably thinking about dropping in a core or a test pit. You're going to be considering your alternatives, and then you're going to be picking from your pick list on the right-hand side. And you can do it with cracking, you can do it with potholes. In this case, you're going to be looking at those 2 holes that have water in them, and you're going to want to do something about, you're going to have to think about your drainage issues. Alligator cracking, along with your driveways and your residential properties. You got to think about those when you're picking your repair. In this case, you've got bleeding. You're going to have to think about whether you recycle or do an overlay. In this case, we see this a lot. You see this a lot as local owners. At this point, you're beyond anything maintenance level, and you're looking at rehab, and you're going to need to do some sort of recycling or reclamation, depending on how deep your or how poor your structure is. And with that, need everybody to weigh in. What repair do we do to this road? And if you said anything but snow plowing, better find another business. All right, recap, why roads, why pavement management? The key here is right treatment, place, time, and right way. Pavement maintenance, we do that because it is the best way to keep our roads, our good roads in good shape. And the key is you're maintaining safety and getting the best bang for your buck. The tools in the toolbox, we've hammered on them pretty hard, but you've got a lot of different tools. And the approach to pick our repair options, you're going to be identifying your distresses, you're going to be rating your distresses, you're going to be analyzing your probable causes, drainage, traffic, environmental. You're going to evaluate your appropriate alternatives, and you're going to recommend a treatment or two to tackle your problems. Bottom line, pavement maintenance is the most cost-effective way to keep our roads in good shape. Got a wide range of tools in the toolbox. For pavement maintenance to work, you got to fix the distress, not just the effects. And first and foremost, you got to ask and answer, how's the drainage? You got the ducts in there, got to fix the water first. With that, workshops coming up in 2023, a whole bunch of different ones. You can see these on our website. Just point out the counties in black are where we're going to be holding our asphalt pavement principles workshops. I'll be doing those at the late April, early May. Got 7 of them scheduled right now. Hope to see you there. We've got a lot of other training opportunities. We've got the remaining webinars in our webinar series coming up on the 7th and the 14th. Got a whole lot of other resources on the website. David does a bumper banner every week, Mondays, Facebook Live, 9 a.m. every Monday. Real good information. He's always got something good to share. So workshops are open. Hope to see you there. Thank you very much. Appreciate everybody's time today. Jody, any questions to finish up?
Nope, there's nothing, just a bunch of thank yous.
Oh, excellent. David, anything you want to say in closing?
Nope, we're good.
Excellent, folks. Thanks very much. Enjoy the snow, and everybody have a good season. Hope to see you at the workshop. Thank you.